Hey everyone, and welcome back to Rewilding the Future. Today we're diving into an exciting topic, the rewilding of golden jackals on the islands of Sardinia and Corsica, where they could help restore balance by taking on the ecological role once filled by the extinct Sardinian dhole. Now I've spent a lot of time observing golden jackals up close, almost daily in fact. My girlfriend and I always get excited when we see them. They're fascinating creatures, incredibly adaptable, curious, and far from the dangerous reputation some people give them. In cities, they mostly feed on rodents, birds, fish, fruit, and yes, even cat food and garbage. But out in nature, their diet shifts to things like small deer, red deer, fawns, insects, and wild fruits. They're clever, resilient, and capable of thriving in both wild and human-shaped landscapes. So what would it mean to bring them back to these Mediterranean islands? And could they really help restore the ecosystems that have been out of balance for centuries? Let's find out. The Sardinian dhole, Cynotherium sardus, was a unique canid that once roamed the prehistoric landscapes of Sardinia and Corsica. Evolving in isolation, this small wild dog was a descendant of the Eurasian dhole, Quan alpinus, a social predator known today in parts of Asia. During the Pleistocene epoch, around 800,000 to 100,000 years ago, ancestors of the dhole reached the islands via land bridges or accidental rafting during periods of lower sea levels. Once stranded on the islands, they became geographically and genetically isolated, setting the stage for an extraordinary evolutionary journey. On Sardinia and Corsica, the Sardinian dhole underwent a classic example of island dwarfism, a process where large animals tend to shrink in size due to limited resources and lack of predators. The insular environment pressured the dhole to adapt to hunting smaller prey, such as the island's endemic deer and rodents, resulting in a more compact body and lighter build compared to its mainland relatives. Unlike the highly social mainland dholes, the Sardinian dhole is believed to have adopted a more solitary or pair-based hunting strategy, a common trait among island carnivores with restricted prey availability. The extinction of the Sardinian dhole around 12,000 to 8,000 years ago is tied to a combination of factors that plagued many island species at the end of the Ice Age. As sea levels rose and climates shifted, ecological changes disrupted the fragile balance of the island's ecosystems. However, the most significant blow likely came with the arrival of early humans, particularly Neolithic settlers. Humans introduced new predators, competitors, such as domesticated dogs, and diseases. They also hunted local wildlife and altered habitats through agriculture and fire, indirectly eliminating the Sardinian dhole's prey base. Unlike adaptable mainland carnivores, the insular dhole lacked the resilience to cope with rapid human-driven changes, leading to its silent disappearance. The story of the Sardinian dhole is a poignant example of island evolution, how isolation fosters unique adaptations, but also how such specialization can become a deadly vulnerability when confronted with sudden environmental upheaval or human interference. Today, its fossil remains tell the story of a remarkable predator that once thrived in Europe's Mediterranean islands, but ultimately succumbed to the relentless tide of change that swept the post-Ice Age world. The islands of Sardinia and Corsica, once home to the unique and now extinct Sardinian dhole, have lacked a native medium-sized carnivore for thousands of years. The absence of this ecological role has likely contributed to an imbalance in the island ecosystems, including unchecked growth of small herbivore populations, increased agricultural pest issues, and a disrupted food web. In this context, the golden jackal, Canis aureus, a highly adaptable canid native to parts of Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, emerges as a potential candidate for rewilding in these Mediterranean islands, not as a perfect replacement, but as a modern ecological proxy for the extinct dhole. Golden jackals are versatile, omnivorous predators that have proven remarkably adaptable to diverse environments, including wetlands, scrublands, forests, and agricultural areas. In mainland Europe, they have naturally expanded their range in recent decades, moving westward into areas such as the Balkans, Hungary, Austria, and northern Italy, a trend largely attributed to climate change, land use changes, and the decline of apex predators like wolves. Their ability to regulate populations of rodents, lagomorphs, and even smaller ungulates makes them an ideal candidate for restoring balance in ecosystems that lack native mesopredators. On islands like Sardinia and Corsica, golden jackals could help control invasive species, manage agricultural pests naturally, and possibly reduce the overpopulation of small herbivores, thus restoring some ecological functions once performed by the Sardinian dhole. Furthermore, introducing golden jackals as part of a rewilding initiative could have wider ecological benefits. These include fostering a healthier trophic dynamic, supporting biodiversity through trophic cascades, and creating new opportunities for wildlife tourism and ecological research. However, such a rewilding effort must be approached carefully, respecting the delicate balance of island ecosystems and considering potential conflicts with human populations. Historical lessons from past introductions remind us that non-native species must be studied thoroughly before any action. But given the golden jackal's ecological flexibility, relative size, and growing presence in all Europe, it offers a realistic, potentially beneficial alternative to restore a role that has been vacant since the extinction of the Sardinian dhole. Rewilding golden jackals in Sardinia and Corsica could represent a bold but thoughtful step towards ecological restoration, a way to reintroduce natural predation, rebalance prey populations, and honor the ancient legacy of the island's lost predator. While they cannot replace the Sardinian dhole's unique evolutionary history, golden jackals could fill the critical ecological gap it left behind, promoting healthier, more resilient island ecosystems in the 21st century. Why not rewild Asiatic dholes, but yes to golden jackals in Sardinia and Corsica? The Asiatic dhole is a pack-hunting predator that needs large territories and abundant big prey like deer and wild boar. With Sardinia and Corsica's fragmented habitats, human activity, and limited large prey, they are not ideal for dholes. In contrast, the golden jackal is a highly adaptable predator and scavenger, perfectly suited for island ecosystems with wild boar, red deer, mouflon, and feral animals. Jackals can help control small prey, clean up carrion, and fit into human-influenced landscapes without major risks. And don't worry, I'll cover this in more depth soon. I'm planning another video on the idea of rewilding Indian wolves in Sardinia and Corsica, since they're smaller and more adaptable than European wolves, plus a future look at rewilding Asiatic dholes and even bringing back megafauna concepts. For a successful rewilding of golden jackals in Sardinia and Corsica, selecting the right regions is crucial. Areas that offer enough natural prey, suitable habitat, low human conflict risk, and ecological need for a mid-sized predator. Both islands still harbor significant tracts of wild or semi-wild landscapes that could support jackal populations. Monte Arcosu and Sulcis Iglesiente region in southwest Sardinia is area dominated by Mediterranean maquis scrubland, cork oak forests, and rolling hills, ideal habitat for jackals. It already supports a diversity of wildlife, including wild boar, mouflon, foxes, and abundant small mammals. The presence of the WWF-protected Monte Arcosu Reserve suggests potential for controlled and monitored rewilding. The low-density human population and existing wildlife corridors would allow jackals to establish themselves with minimal conflict. Gennargentu Massif and Supramonte in Central East Sardinia is a rugged, mountainous region with forests, maquis, and remote valleys. Gennargentu is one of Sardinia's wildest areas. It contains mouflon, wild boar, and a variety of birds and reptiles, enough prey diversity to sustain jackals. Its isolation could prevent human-wildlife conflicts and allow scientific monitoring in a relatively pristine setting. Nura and Porto Conte in northwest Sardinia is coastal region, with its mix of wetlands, forests, and agricultural lands, holds ecological potential for jackals. The Porto Conte Natural Park could serve as a controlled introduction site. Its proximity to coastal wetlands would give jackals access to small prey like waterbirds, rodents, and amphibians, niches similar to those they occupy in their native ranges. Parc Naturel Regional de Corse in Regional Natural Park of Corsica is covering about 40% of Corsica. This vast protected area contains forests, scrublands, mountains, and traditional pastoral lands. The varied topography and prey base, including wild boar, sheep, some feral, and small mammals, offer ideal conditions for jackals. Being a park, it allows for better regulation, monitoring, and community engagement with local farmers and stakeholders. Eastern coastal plains and wetlands of Corsica is a lowland area, has marshes, agricultural fields, and remnant wetlands. Environments golden jackals thrive in across their European range. It also suffers from rodent problems and agricultural pests, which jackals could help control. With proper management, this area offers both ecological and agricultural benefits. Desert des Agriat of North Corsica. Although called a desert, this is a scrubland region with low human density, seasonal grazing, and access to prey. Its semi-arid Mediterranean landscape mimics some of the habitats jackals use elsewhere. It could serve as a low-conflict experimental zone for initial releases. If planned carefully with ecological studies and community involvement, rewilding golden jackals in Sardinia and Corsica's semi-wild zones could restore a missing piece of the island's natural heritage, helping to rebalance ecosystems that have lacked a native mesopredator since the extinction of the Sardinian dhole. If golden jackals were rewilded in Sardinia and Corsica, their interactions with the local fauna would mirror the ecological roles they play across mainland Europe and Asia, as opportunistic mesopredators, scavengers and regulators of small to medium-sized animal populations. Rather than functioning as apex predators, golden jackals often fill the niche of a flexible generalist, adapting their diet and behavior according to prey availability and seasonal changes. Golden jackals are not large enough to actively hunt adult red deer, wild boar, or mouflon. However, they frequently prey on vulnerable individuals such as fawns, lambs, or piglets, especially during the breeding seasons when young animals are left unguarded. By preying on the weak and young, jackals can help regulate population growth and potentially reduce overgrazing pressure on sensitive habitats. Additionally, golden jackals are efficient scavengers and would likely feed on carcasses of large herbivores that die naturally or from other causes, thus contributing to nutrient cycling and reducing the spread of disease from decaying remains. This role is especially relevant in the absence of larger predators like wolves or vultures. In some parts of Europe, water buffalo have been used in wetland restoration projects because of their ability to manage reed beds, maintain open wetland landscapes, and support biodiversity through grazing. If water buffalo are rewilded in Corsica, their interaction with golden jackals would likely mirror their interactions on the mainland with other mesopredators. Golden jackals are not a threat to adult water buffalo, which are massive, gregarious animals with a strong defensive instinct. However, newborn calves, especially if left unattended, could be at risk of opportunistic predation by jackals, particularly in remote or less monitored herds. Such events would likely be rare and isolated, as buffalo herds tend to protect their young fiercely. More commonly, jackals would scavenge on buffalo carcasses or afterbirth remains, playing a valuable role in nutrient recycling within the wetland ecosystems. This scavenging behavior could help prevent disease outbreaks and maintain a healthier environment in buffalo-grazed wetlands. Sardinia and Corsica are known for their populations of feral livestock, remnants of historical pastoralism, including feral cattle, horses, donkeys, goats, and sheep. These animals often roam semi-wild and can cause significant ecological damage through overgrazing, trampling, and erosion. Golden jackals are unlikely to threaten adult feral livestock but may occasionally target newborns, particularly goat kids and lambs. Such predation would be rare and opportunistic rather than systematic. More importantly, jackals would scavenge on livestock carcasses, reducing waste and helping to naturally dispose of remains that might otherwise attract disease vectors. Their presence could also indirectly influence the movement patterns of feral herds, potentially reducing pressure on vulnerable habitats like wetlands or scrublands. Nonetheless, careful management and dialogue with local herders would be necessary to prevent conflict and ensure coexistence. Golden jackals are adept hunters of small mammals, including rodents, hares, rabbits, and hedgehogs, making them valuable in controlling species that often become agricultural pests or damage native vegetation. Their ability to regulate rodent populations could reduce the ecological impact of overabundant species and benefit both natural habitats and human farming communities. They would also opportunistically prey on ground-nesting birds, bird eggs, and fledglings, particularly in open habitats like wetlands, scrublands, and coastal plains. While this may seem negative, such predation is part of natural ecosystem dynamics and can help maintain a balanced bird community by controlling populations of species that could otherwise become overabundant. In wetland areas and near water bodies, golden jackals are known to consume amphibians and fish, especially when other food sources are scarce. By preying on weaker or diseased individuals, jackals can contribute to maintaining healthy amphibian and fish populations. Moreover, by occasionally feeding on invasive aquatic species or overabundant amphibians, jackals might even support the ecological integrity of freshwater ecosystems. The golden jackal's interactions with Sardinian and Corsican wildlife would reflect its role as a flexible, opportunistic carnivore, capable of adapting to a variety of prey and habitats. Its introduction could help restore lost ecological functions, such as regulating small mammal populations, controlling vulnerable herbivore juveniles, scavenging carcasses, and indirectly maintaining vegetation balance by influencing prey behavior. While they are not apex predators, golden jackals often trigger subtle but important trophic cascades that enhance biodiversity and ecosystem health. However, rewilding efforts must be accompanied by long-term ecological monitoring to ensure that golden jackals integrate into the ecosystems without causing unintended harm, especially to sensitive bird populations or human interests. If carefully managed, golden jackals could become a much-needed ecological actor in the landscapes of Sardinia and Corsica, partially stepping into the role once held by the long-lost Sardinian dhole. The reintroduction of golden jackals to Sardinia and Corsica would not only influence prey species, but also reshape the dynamics among existing carnivores. On both islands, medium and small predators like feral dogs, red foxes, and wildcats currently occupy ecological niches in the absence of large predators such as wolves. The arrival of the golden jackal, a dominant mesopredator, could significantly affect these carnivore communities, leading to new interactions, competition, and shifts in territory and behavior. Feral dogs, often forming loose packs in rural and wild areas, represent both a competitor and a potential threat to golden jackals. While feral dogs are usually larger and more aggressive in groups, golden jackals have been known to avoid direct conflict by maintaining distinct territories or adapting their activity patterns. However, competition for food, especially carrion and small prey, could lead to occasional confrontations. In some parts of Europe, jackals have been recorded coexisting with feral dogs by adopting nocturnal habits or avoiding areas heavily used by dog packs. More importantly, feral dogs pose a disease transmission risk, potentially spreading pathogens like rabies, canine distemper, and parvovirus to golden jackal populations. These risks highlight the need for disease management strategies, including vaccination and control of feral dog populations before introducing jackals. On the other hand, golden jackals could help reduce the number of abandoned carcasses and prey on unattended young animals, indirectly limiting resources for feral dogs, potentially suppressing their ecological impact over time. The red fox is a widespread and highly adaptable carnivore already present in Sardinia and Corsica. Wherever golden jackals and red foxes coexist, competition tends to favor the larger jackals, who dominate access to key food sources such as carcasses and prime hunting grounds. Jackals often exclude foxes from their immediate territories, particularly around den sites, which could lead to localized displacement of foxes or a shift in their activity patterns towards nocturnal or marginal habitats. However, this interaction isn't necessarily harmful to the ecosystem. Reducing fox density in certain areas could benefit ground-nesting birds or small mammals that suffer from overpredation by abundant foxes. In this sense, golden jackals may act as a natural regulator of red fox populations, creating a more balanced predator guild and contributing to healthier prey dynamics. Wildcats are elusive, primarily solitary carnivores that prey on small mammals and birds. In both Corsica and Sardinia, the wildcat population faces threats from hybridization with feral cats, habitat loss, and competition with other predators. Interactions between wildcats and golden jackals would likely be characterized by avoidance rather than direct competition. Jackals, being larger and often moving in pairs or small groups, would likely dominate contested resources like carrion. However, wildcats specialize in small rodent hunting within dense cover, a niche that jackals do not heavily exploit. Therefore, while occasional encounters might occur, especially near water sources or carcasses, their ecological roles are sufficiently different to allow coexistence with minimal direct conflict. The main concern would be indirect. If jackals pushed wildcats into marginal habitats or increased competitive pressure on their prey base, careful monitoring would be required to avoid adverse impacts on already vulnerable wildcat populations. The introduction of golden jackals into Corsica and Sardinia would weave them into a dynamic web of interactions with both wild and feral species. As opportunistic carnivores, jackals would play a balancing role, scavenging, regulating prey populations, and competing with or displacing other mesopredators like foxes and feral dogs. Their relationship with large herbivores like water buffalo would be minimal and largely scavenging-based, contributing positively to ecosystem nutrient cycles. However, the success of such rewilding efforts would depend on monitoring these interactions closely. Jackals could help mitigate some ecological problems, like feral dog dominance or overabundant fox populations, but could also create new competition pressures for native species like wildcats. A well-planned, adaptive management strategy would be essential to ensure that jackal rewilding enhances biodiversity and ecosystem health without introducing unforeseen conflicts. Why Sardinia and Corsica need rewilding? The islands of Sardinia and Corsica are not just picturesque Mediterranean destinations, they are ecological jewels with unique biodiversity shaped by millions of years of isolation. However, centuries of human activity, including deforestation, overgrazing, hunting, invasive species introduction, and habitat fragmentation, have severely altered their natural landscapes. Today, both islands suffer from ecological imbalance, loss of native species, and degraded ecosystems. This is why rewilding, the process of restoring natural processes, species, and ecological functions, is increasingly seen as a necessary strategy for the long-term health of their environments. One of the most significant ecological issues in Sardinia and Corsica is the loss of native carnivores like the Sardinian dhole, which once regulated herbivore populations and maintained ecosystem balance. Without such predators, populations of herbivores, wild boar, mouflon, feral goats, sheep, and deer, have expanded unchecked in many regions, causing overgrazing, soil erosion, and habitat degradation. This has led to the decline of native plant species, increased vulnerability to invasive plants, and reduced biodiversity. Rewilding with medium-sized predators like the golden jackal could help restore some of these lost ecological roles, reintroducing natural population control and promoting healthier ecosystems. Both islands face long-standing problems with feral livestock, goats, sheep, donkeys, cattle, and horses, which roam freely in many semi-wild areas. These animals contribute to habitat destruction, overgrazing, and competition with native wildlife. Without natural predators or effective human management, their populations continue to impact forests, wetlands, and scrublands. Rewilding efforts could include introducing natural grazers in controlled numbers, restoring native herbivore populations like the Sardinian deer, and promoting the return of natural predation, which together would help reduce the ecological pressure on vulnerable habitats. Sardinia and Corsica are home to many endemic species of plants, birds, reptiles, and small mammals. However, habitat loss and human pressure have placed many of these species at risk. Wetlands are drying out, forests are fragmenting, and traditional Mediterranean habitats like maquis shrubland are degrading. Rewilding, through species reintroductions, habitat restoration, and removal of invasive species, offers a chance to revive these ecosystems. Projects like the reintroduction of water buffalo in Corsican wetlands, or the controlled return of large herbivores and predators, can help restore natural ecological dynamics and enhance biodiversity. Both islands are increasingly vulnerable to climate change, facing hotter summers, reduced rainfall, and more frequent wildfires. Healthy, biodiverse ecosystems are better able to withstand climate shocks. Rewilding supports ecosystem resilience by promoting trophic complexity, multiple predator-prey relationships, improving soil health, restoring wetlands, and enhancing carbon sequestration through reforested areas. For instance, restored wetlands with grazing water buffalo could improve water retention and biodiversity, helping the islands adapt to a changing climate. Rewilding isn't only about ecology, it also offers economic and cultural benefits. Nature-based tourism, such as wildlife watching and ecotourism, could become a sustainable income source for local communities, as seen in rewilding projects across Europe. Rewilding can also reconnect islanders with traditional, respectful relationships with nature, revitalizing cultural practices tied to landscape stewardship. Moreover, involving local communities in rewilding efforts fosters conservation ethics and shared responsibility for the natural heritage of Sardinia and Corsica. Sardinia and Corsica need rewilding because their ecosystems are out of balance, suffering from the cascading effects of predator loss, invasive species, habitat degradation, and climate change. Rewilding offers a holistic, nature-led approach to restoring these islands' ecological integrity, bringing back missing species, reviving natural processes, and fostering biodiversity in a way that benefits both nature and people. If managed responsibly, rewilding could transform Sardinia and Corsica into living models of ecological restoration, showcasing how islands once heavily altered by humans can reclaim their natural vitality and resilience. So, can the golden jackal help restore the natural balance in Sardinia and Corsica? The answer isn't simple, but the potential is real. By reintroducing a flexible, adaptable predator like the golden jackal, we could revive some of the lost ecological roles once filled by the extinct Sardinian dhole. Jackals can help regulate overabundant herbivores, control rodent populations, clean up carcasses as scavengers, and even balance other predators like foxes and feral dogs. Of course, rewilding must be done carefully, with ecological research, public engagement, and long-term monitoring to protect both wildlife and human communities. But if we get it right, the golden jackal could become a vital player in restoring the wild spirit of these ancient Mediterranean islands. And now, some exciting news. Soon, I'm launching a new video series called Past and Future as part of our Rewilding and Pleistocene Epoch content. With the help of AI, we'll explore the future of reintroducing iconic animals like lions, elephants, leopards, hyenas, and more to the wilds of Europe, the Americas, and Asia. We'll also journey deep into the past to uncover the ecosystems of the Pleistocene era across different regions of the world. These episodes will blend educational storytelling with AI-powered visuals, offering a documentary-style experience unlike anything we've done before. Important note: this series is not meant to replace the incredible work of real wildlife filmmakers and researchers, those who spend days, weeks, or even months in the field to capture nature's wonders. Their contribution is unmatched and deeply respected. Stay tuned, the wild past and future are just around the corner. Thanks for watching. If you believe in the future of wild nature in Europe and beyond, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you in the next adventure.